Hello, so I'm Tom Strange, and I'm curator here at Sigal Music Museum. And I want to spend just a few minutes talking about this most extraordinary piano. This is a grand piano built along the lines of an English grand piano when they were first being invented back in the 1770s. And this one we have determined was made in the year 1775 in Philadelphia, of all places, by a fellow by the name of John Berent. Uh, Mr. Berent was a harpsichord and spinet maker. He had clearly studied in London. He had then gone to Portugal to see if he could open up a shop there. And he discovered when he was in Portugal that in terms of building some keyboard instruments, there was another firm that had the royal warrant, meaning that he would not be able to build that type of instrument while he was in Lisbon. And so he came to Philadelphia in 1770, in September of that year, and he set up shop to make spinets and harpsichords. He was apparently successful. In 1772, we see that he has moved to larger quarters and continues to advertise building these musical instruments. And then in 1775, he came out with an advertisement in late February in the German newspapers, and then in March in the Pennsylvania Packet. And he says that he was John Berent, joiner and instrument maker, and he had for sale an extraordinary fine instrument by the name of pianoforte, of mahogany, so made of mahogany, in the manner of a harpsichord, meaning that it looks like a harpsichord, with hammers and several changes. The hammers, of course, mean that it's a true piano as we would expect it, and the changes would be that he can raise the dampers, which harpsichords can't really do. So only with the pianoforte can you raise and lower the dampers. And then in the case of Berent's instrument, he could also shift the keyboard, in this case, from the right to the left, very much as all Portuguese instruments would have been done, so that he can go from playing on three strings to maybe even just one string. A big change in sound. When he advertised for this piano, it sort of was a landmark for historians. Everyone who wrote about the piano history in America started with the John Berent ad from the Pennsylvania Packet. The problem was that we'd never seen the instrument, and we really didn't expect that we ever would. If we remember our history, March of 1775 is a kind of the last part of being a true colony, because on April 19th of 1775, we have the Battle of Lexington and Concord. And after that point, America is officially at war with Great Britain. This is a year before we have the Declaration of Independence, but the fact of the matter is the British have already treated it as though we are in rebellion. All thoughts in the colonies moved to a war effort. The idea of making fun things like pianos or even harpsichords and spinets is all converted into making things that will get us through the war. So we can see that in the newspaper advertisements from the time. Advertisements for fun things, for fancy goods and such, just drops to zero. And what we see is everything, dedicated toward this war effort. So the John Berent piano was not known, and didn't expect to ever see it. And then 4 years ago, something rather special happened. A gentleman who had a small instrument collection himself had actually come across a piano that was for sale in southern Indiana, near Purdue University, and the instrument had been marked, stamped with the name Johann Berent, signed a little differently than we see it in the Pennsylvania Packet, but it was enough to cause people to be intrigued. Could it possibly be? As it turns out, after we did the full investigation, we determined that in fact, this instrument that I have before me right now is that very piano. This was the one made in 1775 for John Berent. Shortly after 1775, he joins the Continental Army. He's a private in the Army. We have the records of his successful completion of his duties. He returns to his shop in Philadelphia and then dies of malaria in 1780, leaving behind a shop that had bedsteads, tables, and chairs unmade in it, but it doesn't list any musical instruments. And I think the reason is that it's still the war and nobody's buying musical instruments. So there's a high probability that this piano was the only piano that Berent was able to make. In the 1970s, the family that had owned it, probably since it was new, had decided that they were going to do something with it or throw it away. It finally descended to some people who were at that point of, what are we going to do with this thing? And so they engaged Philip Belt, a very well-known restorer at the time, and Philip Belt came in and started a restoration on this piano that was never completed. When I got the piano, it was clear that this had not been made playable, but a lot of things had already been done. Things that we probably wouldn't have thought to do again now, but as I looked at it, I said, well, without changing any history, without altering the piano at all, I can simply return things that were original to it, and I can add what was lost. And then we can make this piano playable again. And so here at the Sigal Music Museum, we're going to be having a concert where we reintroduce this piano to the American audience. And it's a lovely instrument, I think. It'll be fun to hear this in the context of other pianos from that time that have just come into America, the little Zumpy square piano, and not even introduced to America yet, the Viennese forte piano, which is what we think of when we think of Mozart and Beethoven. The English grand would go on to become one of the great pianos in the world. And the modern piano takes a lot from the English grand's approach to how to make a piano. So this is going to be a lot of fun, and we're looking forward to reintroducing this concept back to people, and I thank you for listening.